Okay, so thank you very much. Now, so the next part of today's programme, we'll have an opening keynote presentation on the strategic importance of Asia for Ireland's agri-food sector. We're honoured that Minister Noel Grealish is going to address us. His role is Minister of State for Food Promotion, New Markets Research and Development at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. And then after the Minister's presentation, there'll be a fireside chat with Jason Hawkins beside us here, who's the Group Chief Executive and Executive Director of Carbery. And for anyone who hasn't been to West Cork, of course you should visit Carbery if you're in the business, but also Farm Zero C is quite close to Carbery. It's the world's first carbon neutral working dairy farm. Is that correct, Jason? Or?
The ambition. Yeah.
Well, the ambition, again, the bid. Okay. The world's first serious attempt sounds weak word. We'll come up with a better word. We'll leave it to the experts after. Minister, could I call you to the podium? Could we welcome Minister Noel Grealish, please?
Thank you, Martin. First of all, can I thank my good friend and colleague Alan Jukes for the invite to be here this morning. And when we go back and talk about the formation of governments, and Alan would be very familiar with this, negotiations seem to take place usually late, very late at night or early in the mornings when we're trying to put a programme for government together. And I remember being in the Taoiseach's office at 2:45 in the morning when we had actually finished the negotiations for programme for government, and now it came down to the role of ministers. So the Taoiseach at the time was Simon Harris, and the Taoiseach was Neil Martin, and they came to me and they said, "Noel, we're going to make you the Minister for Food and Drink within the Department of Agriculture." And I said, "Oh my God, if I'm not fat enough as it is, then to put me drinking and eating." But it is a great role, and a role that I'm thoroughly enjoying, and I'm delighted to be here in Cork. I think the last time I was down in Cork was supporting Galway, and we came back with the tail between our legs. But Cork, I think when you see the epic hurling game there recently between Cork and Cork and Limerick, I think that will be the repeat. That will be an All-Ireland final. I think it's coming up, and I would like to see Cork win it. They haven't won it in a long time. But saying that from a Galway man, I don't think we will have the goodwill to win it. I hope there's no Limerick people here, is there? And I'm safe enough, so am I. As I said, good morning, everybody, and I'd like to welcome the members of the diplomatic corps, particularly the ambassador from China. I had the pleasure of visiting China on 3 or 4 occasions. It is a great country that is progressing, and it is leaving a mark on the world economy, and it's important that we do build up relationships with China, which we are doing. Other members of the diplomatic corps that are here, public representative, the Chief Executive of Cork County Council. Can I thank everybody previous to this, and thank particularly Martin and Gerard for your contributions there earlier on. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here at the Asia Matters Business Summit in the lovely surroundings of Cork campus of Munster Technology University. At the outset, I would like to thank Asia Matters, their chairman, Alan Jukes, former Minister for Agriculture, and we'll touch on his role later on, as well as Martin Murray, Executive Director, for inviting me to speak at this, and it is a very important event. Ireland's vibrant agriculture sector, which includes primary production and farming, fishing and forestry, and processing, and manufacture of food, beverages and wood products, is a significant contributor to the economic growth throughout the country. It is particularly important to rural and coastal communities. Indeed, our agri-food sector is the oldest and largest indigenous exporting sector. Agri-food exports have grown substantially in the last 10 years, increasing in value by 66% from 11.6 billion in 2014 to 19.15 billion in 2024. Irish agri-food exports reach over 180 countries. Approximately 90% of our beef, sheep meat and dairy products are destined for international markets. Dairy remains our largest export category, accounting for 34% of exports by value, followed by beef and beverages in third place. All 3 categories increased in value in 2024 compared to 2023. Ireland has a strong international reputation as a supplier of safe, nutritious and sustainably produced quality food and beverages. Global demand for high quality food and beverages is increasing with population, urbanisation and affluence, and the Irish agri-food sector is well placed to play a key role in meeting this demand. The Asia-Pacific region presents huge opportunities for Ireland, as it accounts for 40% of the global GDP and is generating 2/3 global economic growth in recent years, and is home to 60% of the world's customers. That's important, 60%. It is a dynamic region with a rapidly growing young, educated, middle-class population, which is driving demand for innovative, high-quality and sustainably produced food and beverages. Ireland greatly values its relationship with countries in Asia and recognises the mutual benefits that can be derived from this relationship. Our government is focused on building on the existing relationships with the region politically, economically and culturally. To summarise, ladies and gentlemen, the Global Ireland ambitions for the region include strengthening the two-way economic partnership, increasing visibility of Ireland in the region, building a long-term strategic relationships based on our principles and our interests. These elements are very relevant to my department and especially to my role as Minister for State with responsibility for new markets and food promotion. Over the years, we have seen significant growth in our agri-food exports to Asian markets, including China, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia and Vietnam, and we'll touch on that later. I visited Vietnam and Cambodia recently, and Minister Hayden has just been back from a trade mission from Japan and South Korea, where he led up a trade mission which included 22 companies that travelled with them in conjunction with my department, Department of Agriculture, Food and with Enterprise Ireland. There are also significant opportunities to expand into other markets in Asia, including Indonesia and China. I hope to touch on these in more detail in my discussions now with Jason Hawkins, Chief Executive of Carbery, and I'd like to thank you very much for the warm welcome that you give me here in Cork this morning when I arrived. Go to Mila Mahigiv.
It's great. Thank you, Minister. Thank you for being here this morning with us. Privileged to have you here. Thank you for the words. So, look, needless to say, there's been a little bit of noise out there in the last number of months around trade and in particular with an important market like the US, and obviously we see a lot of activity that the government are involved in along with Europe in dealing with that. But I guess, you know, the first question is, how is the government accelerating activities outside of the US market and specifically into Asian markets, and what does that activity look like?
Well, if you go back and look at Ireland and the farming industry, like what we produce in our farms, 90% of that is exported. We produce enough food in Ireland to cater for 30 million people a year of a population of 5 million. So that means that we have to go out and look for new markets. And I think we learned a lot from Brexit, when the United Kingdom is our biggest market for particularly beef and dairy products. So we didn't know what the outcome of Brexit would be at the time. So we did, that was prior to my time, but having discussions with the officials within the department that looked at new markets. The United States is an important market for Irish produce, particularly the whiskey and drinks industry. It's the biggest sales that we have, and we have Middleton here in Cork, I think, and we have other distilleries here, so it is an important market for us, and I hope that agreement will be reached between the Trump administration and the European Union. The European Union is the largest trading bloc with the United States, and I think it's important that agreement will be reached between the two groups, but that has to be done by July 6th. But come back to Brexit. When Brexit came, there was a new awakening, as we'd say, within the department, that we have to look at new markets. And as I said there in my contribution, that 90% or 60% of the consumers are in the Asian market. So it's important that we did look to that. And we have a great organisation there in Board B, and particularly our diplomatic staff around the world, and particularly in the Asia. We have an office in Shanghai. We have an office, Board B have an office in Shanghai. Board B has an office in Tokyo, and they also have a third office in Singapore. And that's crucially important. And we have agriculture attaches within these embassies as well. So they go out and they look at the new markets. And Asia, I think, is going to play a huge role. Take, for instance, Vietnam. I was in Vietnam there for St. Patrick's Day. I was asked, as the role that I'm in, Minister for New Markets and Food Promotion, would I go to Vietnam and Cambodia. We're trying to break into the Vietnamese market, 112 million of a population. They've only 30% food security. They import 1.5 billion worth of produce annually. So we need to get into that market. And look, and I might touch on it later, the whole process of how to get into a market. The most important thing is to get the veterinary agreements between both countries, that the produce that we sell in is of high quality and safe. And the veterinary inspectors have been over from Vietnam to Ireland. They've inspected the farms, they've inspected the processors, and they've inspected the packaging and the shipping to make sure that when the produce does arrive in Vietnam, that it's safe. We hadn't got the veterinary cert. When I was there, I met with my counterpart, the Minister for Agriculture, and we agreed, and we got that part of the process over the line, where we got the veterinary cert agreed by both governments, which was a huge step forward. So we're hoping now to break into that market. And it was interesting, when I was in Ho Chi Minh City, I met with Cheerlon, who have a big presence in Asia and in Vietnam. And I met with one or two of their customers who were buying a huge amount of dairy produce off them. And I discussed the beef industry with them. Would they be interested in buying Irish beef? And they said most definitely. And it was interesting, when I was talking to them, they mostly buy the beef from Russia and Australia, which I found very interesting, that they were buying Russian beef. But now we have the agreements in place, and we're hoping that we will be shipping to Vietnam later this year. And look at, as you said there, Jason, there is great potential within the Asian market for Irish produce, and we will continue to be looking for new markets.
That's great, thank you. And I guess kind of building on that, one of the kind of areas that we all talk about or think about is finding the right value-added markets and the right niche markets, and that involves things like R&D and again finding, you know, market discovery and so on as well. But just in terms of how your department and the government are supporting Irish food companies in terms of developing those products or finding those niche segments that are better value add. Can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, recently within my department, I had a meeting with a lot of the major exporters of of dairy product, farming produce, beef product around the world, not just Asia, but the United Kingdom and the United States. And we discussed that. How can we continue to work together? How can we continue to ensure that we have a high quality product to sell abroad? And it's interesting, Minister Hayden is just back, and I might touch on that later on, back from a trade mission, as I said there, from Japan and Singapore, where he led a group of 22 companies in conjunction with Enterprise Ireland. And it's interesting with the Japanese, they're not interested in quantity, they're interested in quality. And that's one of the big things that when I discussed this with Minister Hayden when he came back, it's the big thing with so when we sell our product abroad, we sell a quality, top-class product, whether it be dairy, whether it be beef, whether it be fish, which is important as well. It's a huge part of our exports. And in my role also as research and development, like take recently, and Gerard, I think you touched on it there, about the grants. We gave out 8.6 million in grant there recently, Minister Hayden and I, to Moore Park in Fermoy to do the research to ensure that we're always improving the quality of the produce that we sell. And I have to say, it is an absolute excellent facility, and I'm going there later on from this to present certificates to young farmers on the grass-based project that they have there, which I have to, if I just touch on it for a few minutes, which is very interesting. They have, and this is a climate issue more so than a beef issue, but it's important when you do go abroad and when you do meet with officials, and particularly with the Minister for Agriculture in Cambodia, and I'll just talk about this for a minute, the climate element of it. I asked him would he come and visit, like to come and visit Ireland, and he said he would love to, because I'd like to bring him, show him where we produce our product, the packaging, the farms and all that. And he said one thing, he finds it very hard to leave his country because the biggest agricultural product there that they grow is rice. And the climate, the storms, the hurricanes, the severe weather that they get there, and he finds it very hard to leave the country because one storm could wipe out 10, 15, 20% of their product. And he was asking us what were we doing in Ireland and in Europe for climate, to protect the climate, because it has a more negative impact on them in Vietnam and in Cambodia and in that particular region. And we're all heard about the methane from the animals, particularly on farming. But in Moore Park, and in conjunction with New Zealand in the southern hemisphere, the Irish government have given 20 million to a university similar to Moore Park over the last number of years in New Zealand to develop a type grass where you have less methane from the animal. And I think that's important. And when we were telling them that in Cambodia and Vietnam, they were very interested in that. And George, you talked there about scholarships between universities and between Ireland and other countries. And I have to compliment our ambassador in Hanoi, who has one of her own initiative. She set up a scholarship between Ireland and Vietnam and Cambodia, where she has a responsibility for also. And there's a number of students now in Ireland paid for by the Irish Embassy in Hanoi, studying agriculture, studying what we are doing here. They've been to Moore Park, they've visited all the agriculture facilities. Three of them are in UCG in Galway, and I had the pleasure of meeting them one morning. And all they want to do is to get their degrees and go back and to work with their own government to show them what they have learned here. And I think that is crucially important. But look, there's challenges. We all know that. We have to keep the product high, and we will continue to work on that within the department.
Yeah, that's great. Going back to maybe some of those markets that you mentioned there again, and you referred to earlier around, which of those markets in Asia, from a government perspective, that we're focused on with an agri-food lens, and I guess related to that, you didn't talk yet of the importance of China, which is our largest export market in Asia. Just touch on those for a second.
Yeah, well, look at China. As I said in my introductory comments, I visited China on 4 occasions. All of them were on a private trip, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed every visit to China. It's a great country. It's a country that's growing. But very interesting, over the border in Kerry, you have a minister there called Michael Healy-Rae. I'm sure you've heard of him, who is now the minister with responsibility for forestry and farm safety. And as we know with the storm recently, and I'll touch on this because this is very important with China, a lot of trees were damaged. And China has agreed to buy 25,000 tons of what's called wind-blown wood. And the first 2 containers left Ireland last week. And it's very interesting how this is done. Now, these are the trees that were damaged by the storm, and 25,000 tons, which is 600 containers, is going to go to China, Ambassador. And Minister Healy-Rae was giving us a presentation there recently, a number of days ago, on how this is done. The wood is put into a container, and there's a little thing put in like a large candle. And when you close the container, you seal it, and then the candle ignites. And the whole container becomes fume, smoke filled, and it kills it decontaminates all the wood. So when the wood arrives in China, it's safe, decontaminated, and it's a great product. And I'd like to welcome the cooperation with the embassy on that, achieving that, is 25,000 tons of wind-blown wood. Come back to the question you asked about food. China is a crucially important customer for Ireland. There's a lot of cooperation between the Republic of Ireland and China regarding with students coming, studying in universities. There was a trade mission to China last September, ministerial-led trade mission to sell more produce into China, and there's another trade mission ambassador being put together as I speak for later this year. We see the Chinese market as a very important market, and we see it as a market that can grow, and it can work both ways. And I think that's the most thing when I do find talking with a lot of these countries, when you do go abroad, particularly in Asia, they like to see what can happen both ways. They don't want all to be buying constantly and getting nothing back. But what we've done and what we will continue to do, hopefully we can see more of this, is scholarships that we can put in place between the Asian countries and Ireland, and hopefully I might be on that trade mission to China, and I'd be looking forward to that.
It's great. You mentioned trade mission there, so hopefully you mentioned your conversation a little bit with Minister Hayden, who's just come back. Any other hot off the press insights as to what he saw out there, how his general visit went, and then secondarily, you mentioned maybe upcoming trade missions and what are the priorities there?
Yeah, I had a brief discussion with them when he came back from Japan and from South Korea. The most important thing that what he found was when he was there is it wasn't the quantity that they wanted, it's the quality of the produce that we have to sell into these markets. And you have to compliment Board BIA for the excellent work that they do on this. And a lot of farmers don't like Board BIA for the simple reason that they do carry out inspections on farms, sometimes unannounced inspections on farms, but that is to ensure that we have a top quality product. And I have to say one thing about farmers. They have worked with governments, and Alan, you know that when you were Minister for Agriculture in 81 and 82, you were telling me the big issue that you had to grapple with that time was the high interest rates, which were in the high double digits at the time, which was very difficult for the farming community. But farmers have come along, and they take pride now in the animal that they produce, in the crop that they produce, and the dairy product that they produce. Just take, for instance, I was in the United States there over Christmas, and I went to Costco's in Florida to do a bit of shopping, and I couldn't believe one of the shelves where all the dairy produce was 3/4 full with Kerrygold. And I remember asking someone in the shop, and I said, how is that? It's the quality of the product. They cannot produce that type butter that we can produce here in Ireland, in the United States. And that is down to the grass-based element of that. And that's down to the research that we're doing in Moore Park and in other areas around the country. And that's where we have to compliment Chagas on that. But going back to Minister Hayden's trip to Japan and so on, he did say it was the quality of the product that they were more interested in, not the quantity.
That's good. That's great. And look, we all share that, and maybe kind of building on it as well in terms of back to the importance of farmers, and I'll be selfish in my own role, right, as a leader of a cooperative. But I'd also maybe apply to even SMEs as well, right? Of the importance of trying to do the right things from a sustainability perspective, investing in sustainability, investing in quality. But how are the government supporting? So I'll say that the PLCs they're on their own. They get lots of support, to be fair. But how are the government supporting cooperatives or SMEs as they look to expand internationally, and maybe don't have those in every case, don't have that experience? You talked about Tier Lawn, who are established and have that strength, but maybe there are other smaller co-ops or businesses that are trying to find their way into regions like Asia. What are the government doing to support those types of organizations?
If I just, before I go into that, if I can just touch on my trip to Vietnam and in the meeting with the Minister for Agriculture. I was in Kerry there recently, and I met with the Kerrygold, and I think they started in 1972 in a caravan in a field, and I'm sure like you have your own co-op and see what you have there now. And when I was discussing the whole agricultural scene within Ireland and where we were in the 70s, where our only export was live animals, and where we are now, where we're exporting 90% of what we produce, the Minister was extremely interested in how did we achieve that? How do we go from just exporting live animals back in the early 70s up to now where we're exporting 90% of what we produce? And a lot of that has been down to the co-op system, where the co-ops got together, the farmers got together, they worked together, and they were very interested on that. And that is an avenue you can see now happening in Asia, and I can safely say I can see it happening in Vietnam. The Minister was extremely interested in to hear how the co-op system works, and to get farmers to work together, not to work against each other. And it has been a huge success here in Ireland, when you see that the major companies, how they're respected all over the world. Now look, at the Department of Agriculture is a big department. It's the oldest department in the country, and there's been great senior ministers within the department. We've one sitting here in the audience in Alan Jukes, who's a long distinguished career in Irish politics, and I do always say to a lot of people, he was the first person that could see the working between parties, and now where we see this government, where you have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and I don't think we'll ever shift them apart from one another, and which is working exceptionally well under the leadership of Micheál Martin, who never stops talking about Cork at every cabinet meeting, but that's why things are doing so well. That's why your chief executive is always smiling here, because she's great ministers and a Taoiseach at the cabinet table. But the government does provide great supports for industry. Anybody that was at the Bloom there recently, Board B, Bloom, when you go around and you see the artisan and you see the small little suppliers, there was one little company I came across there in a very, very, very rural part of Ireland, having 15 people working for them. That's equivalent to nearly 200 or 300 people in the middle of Dublin. And they were supported by the LEO, the local enterprise office in their local authority. Then they were supported by on board BIA, and now they're beginning to export. And I can safely say and honestly say that company will grow and will be a major exporter of the produce that they are producing. The government is there to support them. The government, there's grants, as I said, through LEO, through Enterprise Ireland, through the Department of Agriculture as well, but most importantly on board BIA and our embassies that abroad, particularly with the councillors and the agriculture attaches. We have agriculture attaches in 12 embassies around the world. They do a lot of the preparatory work. They go out and source the markets. Companies might contact us as ministers or within the department. We'll put them onto the embassy. We'll put them onto the on board BIA. They work with them. And then when a trade mission comes, we can work with that company. We can bring them on a trade mission if we see that there's a market for the product in that particular country. But that's where our agriculture attaches work to Mexico later this year. And there's a large, I think, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I think it's going to be led by an Taoiseach to Canada. And it was interesting, just recently, I had a meeting with one of the major off-license companies in Canada. He had 690 off-licenses and turns over 2 billion Canadian dollars a year on drink sales. And he had to take all the American drink off the shelves, the bourbon and all that, because the Canadians would not buy it with what's happening between Canada and the United States. And that's the effect these tariffs are having on US companies. It's the customer, it's the consumer that suffers in this. It's the consumer that pays on these tariffs. It's not the governments, it's the consumer, and that's the impact that it's going to have. So he sees a huge void there now, and that's where he sees the possibility of getting more Irish whiskies, liqueurs on his shelves. And I think he actually did visit Middleton here in Cork when he was here. And if agreements are not reached in particular countries, and the tariffs, it is hurtful, but I think it hurt Asia more than what it has hurt Ireland. I think when you look at Bangladesh, when you look at Vietnam, when you look at Cambodia, they sell a huge amount of their garments to the United States, I know that he's back down again on that, but you don't know what's going to happen at the end. But look at the department is working constantly. The Irish government is working constantly with small, medium enterprises to help them grow. We have Board BIA that's constantly abroad. They have 14 offices worldwide. As I said, 3 in Asia. They're constantly looking at new markets, constantly reporting back to us, and that's where we come in. A lot of these agreements, when they're officially reached, or agreement, it goes political. Then it has to be minister to minister that has to sign off on that. So that's why there will be more trade missions before the end of the year and into early next year.
That's great. Thank you, Minister. And look, you have personal experience. Look, I think those trade missions are incredibly powerful, and as you said, a lot of credit to Board B and other support systems that are out there for all Irish companies as well as the SMEs, which is really important. So I know we're out of time, so I just wanted to thank you for a lot of the insights. Obviously very passionate about supporting the sector and moving it forward. So I'd just like to thank you. Maybe any final words from you to close it out?
Well, look, I'm delighted to be here. As I said, I'm only 3 months in this job. It's a beautiful job. I absolutely love it. But the research and development element is a very important part of it as well, because it's important that we do continue to put money into research to produce a better quality, and for climate action as well. We have to try and protect our climate, and you will get that when you do travel to Asia. It is a big issue with them there, because unfortunately a lot of the hurricanes, a lot of the major storms are in that part of the country. We got one there in Storm Eoin, and look at the damage, particularly in the west coast of Ireland, where 90% of the power was out in Galway alone after that, and we have to learn from that, and I'm delighted that China have come on board and bought the wind-blown wood, 25,000 tonnes, so it's not left to rot on the ground. A market has been found for it, and hopefully we can do more of that. Look at, when I walked into the department and I met Brendan Gleeson, I know Alan, you probably know Brendan, who was retiring on the 1st of October, and I'll finish on this. He said, Noel, actually he didn't say Noel, he said Minister. He said, the most important thing here is we have to make farming a good news story. Farming is a good news story. And the biggest problem that we have in farming now is the youth. There's only 4.3% of people working on Irish farms under the age of 35. It's a major, major, major problem, not just for Ireland, but also for Europe. The incoming EU Commissioner has said it's going to be the one top priority to get young people into farming. I've seen farmers coming into me, elderly farmers. Their son and daughters have no interest in the farm. He grew up on the farm, worked 7 days on the farm. Now there's nobody going to farm the farm. It is a top priority for the Irish government as well. It's a top priority for the Department of Agriculture. It's in the programme for government. We have to bring in more initiatives. We have to bring in more supports to get young people farming. Farming is a crucially important sector in the Irish economy. There's 133,000 farms employing over 169,000 people. Exports 19.15 billion a year. That is huge. There's 2,000 fishing vessels in that involved in all that as well. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge that we have to work on, and it's a challenge that we have to succeed. We have no choice. We have to get young people farming. So look at Jason, thank you very much, and look at congrats to the previous speakers as well. And Alan, as I said again, a man I always admired as a young man. I'm not going to say my age, but I used to great interest in Irish politics growing up, and that's why I'm probably here. But I always admired Alan Jukes, and thanks, Alan, for the invite here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister. We're just waiting for James O'Connor to come, so I'll ask everyone to stay on the stage for a moment. I'm doing the famous Irish ad-lib to connect everything, and before you leave, we'll ask everyone to stand and take a photo of everyone on stage. I suppose going back to what the Minister was saying and the connections with Asia, just to advise people, in case you're not aware, that there's 2 new embassies opening, okay? The Philippine embassy will be the first. new ambassador is Daniel Espiritu, and they're already here just waiting to present credentials. Then Vietnam will open an embassy this year in Dublin. And of course, I'm encouraging my Indonesian colleagues, we can put pressure on them later, to open an embassy in Dublin so I can stop being Honorary Consul of Indonesia. Maaf, boleh saya bertanya. What the minister was saying about Japan, they say about Japan that, you know, what's the difference between the Japanese and the Irish? Japanese take 6 months to make a decision, but 1 minute to implement it. Irish people take 1 minute to make a decision, but 6 months to implement it. So the result is the same, it's just a different process. And a very good example is Takeda. If you can please the Japanese customer, who is undoubtedly the most demanding and detailed customer in the world, you can please anybody. But doing business with Japan successfully raises your whole game, because then you do better for all your customers. Give you an example. I'm friendly with the good people in Takeda. And when they opened their third plant in Ireland, the Japanese government decided to open a plant for Takeda Pharmaceuticals, manufacturing in Ireland for the Japanese market, instead of opening in Japan, because they were so confident in the Irish workforce and quality. And I remember saying to Greg Timmins after, Greg, you know, what was something memorable about this? He said, I may have the figures wrong, but he said that before we opened for the Japanese market, the white on our tablets was something like 99.28%. So they sent it to Japan. The Japanese rejected it immediately. It was totally safe. And it looked 100% white, but technically it was only 99.28 or something. So they had to make all the tablets, to do all their tablets and make it 100% technically white. So once they did that for Japan, they then did it for all the customers. That was just a simple example. Japan as well is the only country in the world I've had the pleasure of living in, I've lived in a few, where you get products with a zero defect guarantee. Can you imagine this? Zero defect guarantee. So there's a lot going on. And again, looking at the scale of Asia, looking at China, Chairman Alan Dukes and I had the privilege last October going to China. We were in Beijing, and I went on to Chengdu. And Chengdu is in Sichuan, but the GDP of Chengdu city is half the GDP of all of Ireland. And the population in Sichuan, 90 million people. So the scale is always different. Okay. So could I now ask everybody here, please, to stand up in the panel. We're going to take a photo, and then we'll transition to the next panel. I'll call them up after.